All right, we're live. Guys, good seeing y'all. Angry Dracolope, Joe, Tom, Matt, Samurai Bird. Guys, I'm glad you're all in. We'll catch people as they come in. I hope everybody's had a great Labor Day. Guys, my guest tonight is JC Mahan. You know him better as Turtle Wolfpack. He supports the community, does a lot with the community, and I've asked him in because he's got a knife. We're going to let him show it, that he designed, partly designed. We're going to talk about all that, but it's through Shaney with Shade Indonesia. So we're kind of fired up about that. Jerbs, good seeing you. JC, do me a favor, buddy. Just quick introduction of yourself, and let's see the Nopalope, and we'll jump right into this thing.
My name is JC. It is literally just a capital J, a dot, a C, and a dot. There's a long story behind it, but I'm not going to get into it tonight because this is not about me. It's about this. And I hope that the lighting in here is doing that justice.
And what is the name of that?
This is Nopalope.
Nopalope. So, I guess first thing is, where did the name come from?
The name actually came from a card game called Exploding Kittens, sorry. And in the game, the way that you lose is if you get an exploding kitten and don't have a trump card to counter it, you're out of the game. But the Nopalope is one of the trump cards. So I kind of thought, you know what? I've got a little bit of a twisted sense of humor. So when life says, or the world says, you're not going to make it, nope.
I like it. I like it. Now, you and I talked a little bit beforehand. For everybody to understand, JC is in, you say Alberta?
Yes, Northern Alberta.
Okay. So he is in the Great North. JC, how much time do you spend a year in the woods? Because I want to give a little background, and then we're going to talk about the knife.
For work, I work in the woods.
Okay.
I try to avoid the jobs that are more suburban. And when it comes to time, my pleasure time, I'm out in the woods. Like, the woods are my backyard. You talk to I know that you've spoken to a few fellows who talk about driving a few hours to get to the forest. Mm-hmm. I walk out my back door, and the Pembina River is about 600 meters from my back door.
Okay.
We have moose and bear that come through our yard all the time. I live there.
That's awesome, man. I know Jerbs, BC Jerbs has sent me pictures of moose and all that. I'm fascinated with that. I'm fascinated with the great outdoors. Captain Electro, Ken, welcome in. Vlad Knives, how y'all doing? Matt Pearson is also from up that way. Now, here's the deal. And we're just going to backtrack our conversation that we had beforehand. The Nopalope, you were inspired by what?
I was inspired, well, more recently, I was inspired by the video that you did on the Nightmare 3. And that is what started the final leg of the journey. I saw it. It appealed to me. I had no means of really communicating with the designer because I don't do certain social media. I just never did.
Right.
And it led me to make an Instagram account, and that led me to see the pictures of a larger design that he did of a finger ring kukri called the Valkyrie. And it's a full-size kukri. It is absolutely gorgeous. I'm not going to mince my words. I mean, every single blade that Shaney does is beautiful in its own right. It's not necessarily for me, but that's the joy of the knife community. Or one up.
Absolutely. No, that's spot on. That's spot on. Now, I'm glad you said that because as fate would have it, whatever would happen, I just released, you and I were just talking, I released the video on Thor that was supposed to come out an hour and something ago. It just loaded up. But when you talk about Shaney's work, now that what the Nopelope is 5160 with micarta handles, correct?
Yeah.
Guys, if you see, and this camera's terrible, but if you see this little insignia, that is made by Shade. That's Shaney's design right there. There
right
it
there.
is. That if you see that, that's Shade Indonesia. He does a fantastic job, does as much, and I'm not going to show this long. I like his work. I want to focus on the Nopelope. And JC, I appreciate you coming on, but let me back up just a second. Guys, here's the deal. Joe and I have Blade Talk, and we have a lot of folks on. When I do this, I want to bring in people from the community. I want to bring in people who are passionate about knives, who are in the outdoors. So if you're asking, man, what? That's why I wanted JC on. Not only does he support the community, but he had a thought. He's using someone that I use, Shaney, that I believe in, and I wanted to have you on. So thank you for coming on. I wanted to have you on and just do an informal. If you have questions, guys, same thing, just post them. We'll get to them. This is going to be more of a free-flowing roundtable type talk. And I'm glad that you brought that on because I wanted to talk about the differences between what I get from Shaney and what you get. What you get is very practical. Explain the ring. What appeals to you about the ring on that kukri?
Many years, a few years ago. Now there's another channel that I follow, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes here when I mention him. But Justin at Leonidas Knives and Gear, I saw a few years back. He was showing his Tops karambit, the big one. I can't think of the name of it now. And karambits have always appealed to me, but they're not a practical woods knife.
Right.
And with the finger ring, that's your pinky lanyard. Like the way Shaney did this, that's your pinky lanyard. It's not hanging out when you're in the underbrush or the bottomland. The bottomland, like your swamp. Our bottomland is ridiculously thick. I know you've seen the pictures that I posted on Instagram. That does not do our bottomland justice. Right. Any pack or anything that's wider than your body basically is going to be torn to shreds. So this, not only is it aesthetic, and it's hugely aesthetic for me because I absolutely love the look of karambits, but I can't justify one.
Right.
So this, and I don't have as big of hands as you, that's for bloody sure. But for me, that is a perfect snap cut right there with the pinky in there.
Yeah.
And that really, sorry, go ahead.
No. The thing that appeals to me about the pinky ring, and that's what we'll call it for this conversation, not only the lanyard, not only all that, but there's a knife from Tops. Funny you should mention that. And it doesn't matter what it is because I can't think of it. But the guy put a ring on it, not so much for the pinky. He did, yes, but for skinning game or if he's out doing something or processing and the knife were to get wet or whatever, he can hang it up, hang it off his belt. He doesn't have to put it in leather. That appeals to me a lot because of the swamp, because of what I do. I was out there today. And it's like every time you cut something in the swamp, you've got to wipe the blade off. It doesn't matter which you're in the swamp. Carl, welcome in. Guys, as you guys come in, Dwayne, I know I've seen you. Somebody, Joe, help me welcome people. If you're in the comments, we'll get there. But being in the swamp, it's like every time I turned around and you don't want to keep resheathing. So I love the ring. That's the first thing I thought of there too. Now, you work on the pipeline, right?
Yes,
okay.
Usually.
Okay. And I don't we don't want to give away too much if you don't, but I want to give folks an idea of what you do, because that plays into this too, because you're constantly and consistently in all kind of environments.
All right. Where I'm working right now, and I'm leaving tomorrow, it is 6 hours away from where I live.
Okay.
It is over 80 kilometers. I'm not sure what that equates to miles. I'm sorry. Down a dirt road in a camp in grizzly bear country.
Okay.
There have been 3 confirmed sightings of grizzly bear within 500 meters of where we are working. I do carry bear spray. We have multiple deterrents on us, but we are literally in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
That's what it is. When I do my job, because I work with radiation, I work alone. No one else can be around me. I am monitored by the government. I have multiple badges, multiple electronic survey meters.
Mm-hmm.
You can't smell it. You can't taste it. I am literally responsible for everyone on the job site to make sure that they are out of my work area before I start working. That's how critical it is. Yeah. And I also need to be mindful of the wildlife, the environment, and everything else. I'm sorry if I'm.
No, I ask a question. You're fine, man. And it's interesting with the radiation, because that's what Meg's around radiation and has to have the same type badges. Now, basically, what you're doing is X-raying welds.
Yes,
which is awesome. Which is awesome. But let's talk more about that kukri design, because I know that a lot of folks misunderstand how practical a kukri is. I know a lot of guys in here with us now understand that it is, and they use them. But for folks who are watching this later, give me some thought process behind that kukri where you're at.
I wanted something. Now, I've been using traditional kukri for years. I have kukri from Kukri Handicraft Industries. I have kukri from, I can't think of the name now, Kailash Blades. I have kukri from a couple of other kukri houses that I can't think of right off the top of my head. Sorry. I actually have a first generation Scourge kukri from KHI Nepal. Mm-hmm. And I know that you know someone who has one.
Mm-hmm. He's in the comments.
Yeah. And mine weighs 944 grams. She is a big, chunky girl. Yeah. And I have carried that thing on my hip, backpacking up a mountain. I've taken it on more bush camping trips than I can count. I love the kukri because this is a hatchet that is easier to carry on my belt.
Now,
that is what this is.
Let me ask you this with that. You know, I had Blackie Thomas on not long ago.
Yep.
Do you do different grinds on your kukri, or do you keep it set up how it is?
I don't do different grinds because I find that it's completely unnecessary.
Okay.
It's much easier just to have one grind and just sharpen it all the way through. Mm-hmm. That's what I find.
Well, what I'm leading to is the difference where you're at, you know what I'm saying? And that's why I was asking you how you did that. Now, when you go out, and again, this is just to give Armored Sweatpants is in the house, Vlad's in the house. This is just to give everybody a little backdrop. When you go to your job and you go to the camp, when you head out, you're out for the day. So you're out in the woods for the day on the pipeline, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like you come back and forth, or you're in the city. Once you go out, you're out. So you have to have something you can rely on.
Absolutely. Once I go out to a camp job, Generally, what we're doing right now is a 24 on and 4 off. But
Okay.
one of those 24 on is a travel day.
Okay.
And
Okay.
that's what the rotation is. Other than that, we are in camp. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't go back to civilization.
Right. So you're there.
Yep.
Now, you and I talked right before, and you brought up some interesting points, which I'm excited to kind of see. What's the coldest weather you work in?
The coldest weather I could realistically work in with my equipment would be about minus 25. And then the camera mechanism will actually start to fail.
Okay. Okay.
It's that simple.
We talked about the steel, and I'm really, because see, here's the deal, JC. In January, when you're freezing your ass off, there's going to be days here where it's 60s I mean, people laugh at us like if it gets 20 here, and you can ask Joe, 20 here because the river's right there and it's 80 to 90% humidity. It's insane, but we're never, ever, never, ever cold enough where cold's a factor on our blades. Where you're at, it's a massive factor, is it not?
It absolutely is. And that is one of the reasons that I am actually not a proponent of some of the super steels in an extremely high hardness Rockwell C. And that's another part of my industry. When we start talking about hardness Rockwell C and hardness Burnell and things like that, I do hardness testing. I know exactly what those are.
Right.
I've done those inspections on pipe and things like that. And anything that is too hard, if it is not tough enough, it can crack, it can chip, and it can actually explode in extremely rare cases.
Yeah.
Case in point, now this is a little bit off topic maybe, but I think it's a good example. Grants Forest Brooks Axis are extremely well liked in the bushcrafting community. They're considered high end, they're considered pick of the litter. I will not own one. Their steel is fundamentally a 1060 steel, recycled Swedish steel, which is great idea. But because of the market that they are targeting them to, they want a thin knife-like edge on the axe. In my environment, in extremes, they crack.
Yeah.
You've got a $300 Canadian axe that is all of a sudden useless.
Yeah.
And that is one of the reasons that I really, really like 5160. 5160 is extremely forgiving at lower harnesses.
That's what I was going to ask you. That obviously factored into your decision to go 5160. And I love 5160. Always have. Always will. It's an awesome carbon steel.
Yep.
I was going to ask you, did you talk to Shaney about the heat treat?
I did not. I let him fly with it. He's the artist. I gave him the idea. I wanted to see what he would come up with.
Well, drop back and give us a full view of it, if you will, because I think it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, see, that just screams to me practicality.
This was designed as an everyday carry bush kukri. I have kukris that are 13 inches. I've already talked about the Scourge. I was there on the Zombie Squad forums when the designer was designing it, and he took all of our input to heart when he designed the Scourge. I remember that.
Great.
I remember the original drawings.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful blade. I love my Scourge. But it doesn't fit very well underneath my coveralls.
Right. So what's your blade length on that? Give me your blade length and your blade thickness.
The blade thickness is more than 1/4 of an inch. Regretfully, I didn't bring out the calipers, but it's got to be at least 5/16.
Probably.
It is extremely thick. but with the grind, and that's a zero grind, what in the world is it called now? It convexes down to basically a Scandi. I'm not sure what the actual terminology of that is.
I believe it's a zero grind. And I might be wrong, but I know that talking to DJ, some of the grinds he's done, he's used the term zeroing out. And if I'm wrong, somebody, but you've got a thick, and I was going to ask you about that too, because I think that plays in. So you've got a thick, I'm sorry, how long did you say the blade was?
Okay, the actual blade is a little over 8 inches. The cutting edge is about 7 inches.
But see, on a kukri, here's what people miss on kukris. When we start talking, if you say, oh, it's an 8 inch, well, that ain't an 8 inch on a kukri is all you need, in my opinion. I mean, now I like big knives. I like to scourge everybody. I've got a 15 inch kukri and I love it. But when you go like 7, 8 inch on people don't understand. And I'm not talking again about like people that watch these, because certainly they do, but I'm talking about just people out there. When they want to pick up a kukri, they start throwing out these crazy numbers, and I'm going, and in my head, I'm thinking you'll never be able to control it, because you don't have, if you're not versed in one, and it is a nuance, and again, it says nothing to do with being arrogant. It's just having about screwed myself up with them. If you don't have that little nuance with a kukri, it can get away from you in a hurry. But an 8 inch to me is perfect. And I'm a big fan of the Nightmare 3. It's one of my favorites. It's really beautiful. Is for down here, for what I do with it. It's perfect. And I think that might be about the same blade length. Now I know it's not the same thickness. I think this one's just under a quarter.
I believe the Nightmare 3 has a longer cutting edge.
It may. I don't have my stupid tape measure right here, but again,
me neither. But that's also because of this.
Yeah, but see, I like that. I
wanted that specifically, like back here, it's a hatchet.
Right.
It's a hatchet. It's almost the full length of a hatchet. Right here, it's still a little bit front heavy, but right here, it is completely neutral. Completely neutral. There's no weight whatsoever on either end. And that's Shaney. He did that. Like that's completely, like there's no other way of describing it.
That dude.
I mean, you go up on the harpoon, and back to an earlier comment I did on harpoon tips are all in vogue. I mean, right there. I'm not even, there we go. I mean, you're skinning a moose.
Yeah.
It doesn't even feel like anything.
Yeah. This is 500. It's a great design.
And it's heavy. For me, this is heavy. It's 557 grams. Like, this is a heavy blade for a 7-inch blade.
But that's what you need. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you were going for. Now, do you work through the winter? Do you guys work through the winter?
Absolutely.
Just keep right on rolling.
Yep. Put your insulated pants on and your parka and keep going. Seriously.
Moving. No, I believe you. I believe, because the work's got to get done, especially on the pipeline. Real quick, BC Gerbs, would you put straight edge? Would you get a link for straight edge knives up there, please? Welcome into everybody. If I missed you guys, Daniel, Jeremy, Tom, Gargoyles Blade, good seeing you guys. Glad you're in here. Tom Ritter, how are you? For those of you guys who are just coming in, this is JC Mahan, Turtle Wolf Pack on social media, supports the community. He got with Shaney of Shade Indonesia and had a Nopalope made. I asked him to come on, one, because I've got a lot of stuff from Shade coming. So I wanted another opinion, an opinion that I personally respect. I wanted another opinion on here to give you guys some input and a little feedback, because I know you guys see me like swinging them and going to town. And if you watch that, JC, I'll say like this, the Thor video, I've never in my life had a blade where I had to temper the swing at the end. but it was made by Shaney. It's a 13.5-inch blade, 1/4 inch thick, and it hit so hard that as I got down towards the end, I literally, it's not one, a lot of times in my videos, I can go to town and I can hack and I can swing as hard as I can. With this, I couldn't, but there was no edge damage. And I think that speaks volumes. And I'm glad you went with Shaney, and I'm glad you went with Shade, because that guy is killing it. Now, do you know much about his process? Because I do not.
I don't. I honestly don't.
I don't even know how many folks they got working there. I just know he puts out quality stuff. If you're on Instagram, if you guys are on Instagram, you can type in Shade. Is it Shade Indonesia or just Shade?
It's Shade Indonesia.
Type him in, man, and just because what the stuff I demonstrate, guys, comes straight out of Carnivora, which is more fantasy to functional. Now, Eric Outer Limitless has designed 2 knives with Shade. And I should be getting my hands on them, and they're not through, one's through Carnivora, one's through Shade, and I get confused with that.
I only knew about one from him so far. That's interesting.
And I probably shouldn't have said that.
I didn't. Sorry, what? I
probably shouldn't have said that. I don't know.
No, I was.
That's my bad. So nobody tell Eric that I just told on him. But the thing is this, guys, with Shade, there are certain companies like Tops. You think 1095, Work Tough Gear. You think SK85. Now, when I hear Shade, I think 5160. John, JW, good seeing you guys. Glad y'all are here. I think 5160. And when I say that, I'm talking about folks who do it well. And Shaney does it. He's got it down pat. He really does.
Yeah.
The Durgoth that I just did, and Jason Dixon's not in here, but I honestly, they actually wound up giving me that knife. Anything Shaney makes, I'll buy. Which leads me to this. Is that a design that someone could purchase?
I would say go to Shaney and ask. I am going to ask him that any further Nopalope that he makes, he serializes. But I'm not selling them. But if someone wants one, if it works for you, go for it.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, it's good to go.
Yeah. That was kind of what I was asking you, if you minded. Now, JC, I'm going to take a quick second because Joe asked, what's the difference between Shade and Carnivora? Same group at me. Joe, the deal is this. Carnivora is its own entity, and Armored Sweatpants just brought up a tremendous thing. But here's the deal. Carnivora is its own entity, and it has designers, right? It has other designers. They use Shade of Indonesia to make their products. And Armored Sweatpants, if fantasy ends up functional, it ruins. And that's true. That's true. And that's, JC, that's what we talk about certain things aren't our taste. And the truth is, with me, I grew up a knife nut going in, down here, they had malls and they'd have these cigar shops and they'd have the suits of armor and they had all, but it was crap, man. It was all crap. Yeah. And I bought one or two and they'd knock your head off with the price and it wouldn't. So when this come along, because I'm a big knife guy, it's the kid in me. I thought, I'm going to give them a try. And Shaney takes that quality workmanship, and he has a warrior mentality. Mm-hmm. He really does. He takes that mentality and he makes these designs. And guys, listen, whether it's for you or whether it's not, I understand. But you can't argue quality. You
No.
can, and my point there is this: you may not like this. This may not be your wheelhouse, right? May not be your wheelhouse. I get it. I do. But there's no denying the quality. And you see Shaney's mark there. And that's kind of what I want to stress during this. And I'm honestly, I'm pretty excited to hear your reports as we go throughout these upcoming months. Now, when does it get cold up there?
Theoretically, it should have been cold here already, but we're seeing a lot of days that are hitting plus 30 Celsius, which is fairly unseasonably warm.
Now, what?
By about,
somebody help me with that.
oh, sorry, I don't know the conversions.
Cap, I know Captain Electro is a good conversion, but is it like shorts and t-shirt weather?
It is shorts and t-shirt weather for me.
Okay.
Like,
Okay.
it is ridiculously hot for me, but anything over plus 25 Celsius for me, my blood boils. I'm a cold weather critter through and through. I really am. Like, I would not survive in your environment.
Right. Well, and that's, see, I like cold. Hold on one second. I like cold better than I like hot. Let me get this. My son just texted me. I apologize. I like cold better than I like hot. And my wife is from Detroit, right? And being down here, now I haven't lived in cold. I've been in the South my whole life. So for me, going up, seeing it, it's like, oh, it's cold and that's neat. That's different from living in it. My uncle lived in it and despised it because he, had a farm and did all that. But one of my things, JC, one of my bucket list things is this. I want to come to Canada or up north and do an extreme camp. And for you guys, that's probably normal, daily stuff. But we don't get to do it. Like when Joe come down in February, it was literally 20 with the wind blowing. And it was cold. We can say it's cold for here, but that was one day. And then I think 2 days later, it was back to 70. You know what I'm saying? So we just don't experience cold here. Yeah. Like it'll be, and I don't know what the conversion is, but we're going to be 90s plus till the end of November. There's been Thanksgivings here where it's 85 to 88. I mean, that's not unusual, right?
Yeah.
So cold for me is like, I want to try it out. Now, I might not like it when I get it, but that's why that was the other reason I wanted to have you on, because I wanted to hear some about being out. When you talk about being in a camp, you guys stay in those prefabbed trailers, I'm guessing.
Yes.
That when the wind blows, it comes straight through there.
Yeah, they're not the best. Not really. Now, I do know one conversion from Fahrenheit to Celsius. About 32 degrees Fahrenheit is 0 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
And it's not an exact, yes, it's not an exact conversion after that, but I think it's around minus 40 where it actually starts going hand in hand again.
Right.
And if you are cold camping in the winter here, and cold camping is without a hot tent, without a stove in your tent, basically, or something like that. When you're cold camping here, your sleeping system is probably going to weigh about 15 to 20 pounds.
It would have to,
and that's just your sleeping bags.
Yeah, but it would.
I know,
it would have to.
I have those. Like, I have the entire Canadian Army sleep system, and it's made out of goose down. It's old. It's older than I am, and I don't use it unless it is winter, because I boil.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the American Army sleep system is fairly decent, but not as warm as the Canadian one. But it's also not as bulky. But that's cold camping, where you toss your stuff down and that's where you sleep.
Okay, Grant Lee, thank you, my friend. Grant said 37 Celsius to Fahrenheit is not, so it's 98 degrees. 37 Celsius is 98. Brandon, how are you? Tom and Tom's in the house. Yeah, see, that's warm, dude. 37 Celsius to
That
Fahrenheit. If
is.
that's 98 degrees, that's hot. That ain't warm. That's hot as shit. But that's
Yeah.
the way it is. That's the way it is here. And Thrash, good seeing you, buddy. I'm doing that Spartan Harsey folder probably tomorrow, Bubba. And then it might get lost in the mail. But the thing is, JC, like tomorrow when I go to work, say it's people like, oh, I do like the hot. I understand it. I hate it because tomorrow it'll be 90 to 95, 75, 80% humidity. And that doesn't mean it's raining, guys. That just means that's the way it is.
Yeah.
And then I work by a 25-foot long, 12-foot tall, 10-foot wide, 400-degree oven all day. It's a wonder I'm this fat, but it's, you throw that in kind of an enclosed warehouse. I long for a little cold. Trust me, I do. But I'll say this, and then I'll let you jump in. When I went to Blackie's, which is just 2 hours north out here, and we're still in the South, bear that in mind. It's this beautiful Lake Geneva. And my guy John, who's in the room, was there. My dumbass goes right to the lake and sets up some Fred Sanford looking tarp thing. This was my first time, man. My wife about had a stroke. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna go camp for 4." She said, "What? Huh?" But JC, I set it up. And
I saw that.
Did you? When I set it up, man, I set it facing the darn lake because the wind was blowing towards the lake. Little did I know, and nobody told me, that about 6 o'clock at night, that wind turned and blew straight into my little shelter. Bro, I like to froze to death, but I learned so much by doing that.
Yeah.
So it'll take me a bunch of those. And what my point there was this. Before I ever tried to go north of the Mason-Dixon line to cold camp, I would get with you guys on some kind of cold weather system. Because that to me would be essential, correct?
Yes. One of the biggest advantages for me in this environment is that I'm about 145 pounds soaking wet.
Okay.
I've never been able to put on weight. I get my sleep system. I undress in my sleeping bag. When I get into it, I stuff everything down into the foot box. A bigger guy can't do that.
Right.
You're at a marked disadvantage to me in a cold environment. You find a sleep system that you fit in, I almost guarantee you're not going to be able to get out of your clothes, and you don't want to sleep in your outer garments in your sleep system, even in the cold. You get undressed, you get dressed in your sleep system. Period. End of story. It can be lethal if you don't.
Right. Is that because you sweat and then get cold?
Yes.
Okay.
And stuffing your clothes down into the bottom of the sleeping bag allows them to partially dry during the night from your body heat. And the heat dissipates through the sleeping bag or whatever sleep system you're using.
Right. Now,
and moisture kills in the cold.
That's kind of what was going to be my next. So when you go out, you also make sure you don't like sweat profusely.
Absolutely.
You take your time. Like, let me ask you this. If you're say you're at camp and you've got to go x-ray some welds, right? What's the furthest distance you might have to walk to do that?
I've walked. Now, it needs to be taken into perspective because I'll walk the entire length of a pipeline back and forth 3 times to each weld, because there are 3 shots on each weld to get the entire circumference of the weld. So I travel an extreme distance every day.
Right.
But it's not a constant distance, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah. My point though is, like, with your loadout, you do have to be careful though, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, during the day when you're there, and I guess this is what I'm leading to. Is there ever a time with any danger of getting caught out and having to stay overnight at a particular location? Or do you just go, you know what, screw it, I'm going back to camp?
We would err on the side of caution.
Okay.
Now, to elaborate a little bit on your question, I am always prepared for the overnight.
Okay.
If there's 3 feet of snow, that's awesome. If there's a large spruce tree with overhanging branches and 3 feet of snow, I'm set.
Okay.
That's the best shelter in the world. That's a snow
Now,
cave.
now do
That
you report
is,
in? Would you report in, hey, I'm not coming back, or?
if we could, yes, that would be
Okay.
an extreme. Something has gone seriously wrong. Somebody should theoretically come looking for us. But if not, there's always that 1% that I think about.
Yeah.
That 1%. It's like car insurance. I haven't needed my 1%, but I still got car insurance.
Right. No, it makes sense. See, this is fascinating to me, and to the guys in the chat. I'm not ignoring you, but I kind of am. But it's kind of what I do anyway. This and show the Nopalope again, because I don't want to lose sight of that. John Peters, welcome in. Good to see anybody. But this, the whole, and guys, what I want y'all to understand is this: Choir Boys Cutlery Outdoors. And I love knives. Y'all can see it. We're putting out tons of content. And I love the Nopalope. Love that design. I love that it's functional. I love that it serves a purpose. But when you see me, guys, with guests on, and I'm asking some of these same questions, it's because, like, I would love, JC, I'd love to be able to get some gear and go camp. But I'd die of dehydration because it's going to be 85, 90 degrees tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm asking you, that to me is fascinating, because you're truly in a survival type situation.
Yep, potentially.
So, with the potential, you go out, you get called in a snowstorm or something like that. That's why I like having these guys on, guys. That part to me is fascinating. I'll tell you like this: a lot of my YouTube time, I try to catch as much of our content creators and the Brothers of the Blade and stuff as I can. But a lot of my time is spent watching these extreme camps. And I like it. There's a bunch of Canadians that I watch because I love it. Now, give me your typical day. What time do you get up? What time do you get started? Do you put the Nopalope on a belt, or is it something that you backpack? Okay, it is belt carry.
If your knife is not on your belt, you do not have it. Period. I'm a firm believer in that.
Okay.
You can have the best survival kit in the world in a backpack, and you're kayaking down the river. You're not going to have that when you capsize, your ankle is busted, your right arm is twisted. What's in your pockets? That's the question you need to ask yourself. What is in your pockets right now? What do you do? You hunker down, you build yourself a fire. You find yourself a tree to hug. And that's going to sound weird, but even underneath a lodgepole pine, it doesn't rain underneath a lodgepole pine, and they've got no cover whatsoever.
Right.
It doesn't rain under a tree. You stay put, you build yourself a big smoky fire. In my environment, that can attract cougar, but not bear.
Right.
It can be over 100 during the day and below 30 in the evening. Yeah, that's extreme. That sounds like desert to me.
Now, Brandon is up there in Oregon. JR, how are you? We would love to have the Vlads on. Just, I'm watching some of the conversation. But here's the deal. Go ahead.
Sorry. Another point that I actually wanted to make, you were talking about the extreme heat. Now, you may remember this, but I do. We used to have salt pills in our first aid and our emergency kits. And I've worked in heat and worked so hard where there was salt encrusted in my clothes. You start losing salt, you start getting joint pain, you start making bad decisions. Salt is absolutely critical, or some form of electrolyte replacement is absolutely critical in extreme heat. You can drink gallons of water in extreme heat, you can still die.
Yeah.
You're done.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. People don't realize that you're through dealing. But tell me this. Tell me what blades do you carry on a daily work day, and then we'll cover on a camp day, something like that. But for your work day, what would you carry with you? We know you're carrying the Nopalo. Macho,
I
thank you for
don't.
coming in, buddy.
I don't remember the brand, the model. Sorry, but
All
it's
right.
a little buck knife that I've carried for going on 10 years now. It was when they first came out, they were $10 at Canadian Tire. So I bought
Gotcha.
spares. This is
Right.
still the original. The pointy tip is broken off. I've used this a ton of times at work. It's in a 420 J2 steel, for crying out loud. It's like the worst steel for a knife in the world. I've made probably hundreds of feather sticks with this. I've split kindling with this. It just keeps going and going and going. And I
It's
like this one.
It's their heat treat.
It is easy to keep clean as well. It's a liner lock. You just blow it out. It doesn't keep sand in it. It's easy to maintain. Just a tiny little. It's something that most knife snobs wouldn't even consider. And I have a lot more expensive pocket knives than this. But this one works.
You go with what
Then I
works.
have a Sorry?
You go with what works.
Yeah.
That's my motto. If it works, you carry it.
I have a multi-tool on my belt at all times. Right now, it's a SOG, which has fascinated me because you can put the little driver bits in the end of it and use whatever screwdriver you want.
Right.
I love my Gerber multi-tools. I love my Leatherman multi-tools. I've got a little tiny Swiss Army knife that's in my pocket 24/7. It's been there for years. So on any given day, I will have my belt knife, my pocket knife, my other pocket knife, and my multi-tool. And sometimes my multi-tool has 2 blades. So it's more than anybody should realistically need.
Well, I carry a lot, and I'm not in the woods all day. I carry extra stuff that people don't see when I'm in the woods.
Yeah.
But there's a difference in having a YouTube channel and filming stuff and then actually being in the woods. And again, what I found just by going to Blackie's was I could cut that in half, but the stuff in my pockets mattered, if that made sense.
Yeah.
Like that, I always have a backpack full of stuff, but I'm learning that, hey, leave that at home. Like tomorrow, I'll give you for instance, and if you guys would kind of tell me what you carry in the comments. But here's what I'll have on me tomorrow, JC. I'll have 2 big lighters. Kongs and bases, welcome in. I always carry 2 big lighters. I'll have a pocket knife of some sort. I'll have a pocket fixed blade of some sort.
Yep.
And I'll usually have some kind of cheap multi-tool. That's what I carry pretty much every day of my life. If I'm in the woods, I'm gonna have a belt knife always have a belt knife. And it's I'll tell you what it is more often than not, even if you don't see it, it is the Nightmare 3. It just is. I have had an infatuation with kukris, and people, there's a raging debate whether it's a kukri or something else. To me, it's a kukri style that works for me. But I've been infatuated with kukris and kukri styles since I was a little boy. My grandfather served in World War II in Italy, and in that Italian campaign, he served alongside some Gurkhas. So I've been aware of the Gurkhas since I was a little boy. And my grandfather was a large man and a tough man.
Yep.
And I asked him, I said, Granddaddy, who was he said Gurkhas. He didn't even let me finish.
Yep.
He said Gurkhas. He said he actually had, and I've seen that, I've got a picture of it somewhere. He had an actual kukri that they had given him. And so that infatuation has been there. And then once I started carrying one, much like you, I'm like, this is highly functional. And it's cool to know that in Canada, it's highly functional. And in the Florida swamps, it's highly functional.
Yep.
So I have a belt knife on me. You guys kind of load up with what you have. there. Now let's go about 10 more minutes and we'll call it. And you guys have been awesome, but let's go ahead.
It's interesting that you're talking about the Gurkhas, because I know a German fellow who is ex-West German false scrimmager. I'm probably butchering that word. He's was an ex-paratrooper. And in World War II, I believe it was his grandfather, captured a kukri from a Gurkha soldier. He still has that to this day. I posted the pictures on my Instagram a while back, and he has no children. And he told me when he dies, I get that kukri.
That's awesome.
But that is a very unique story, because you hear about the Gurkhas all the time, and they're very, very renowned. I could tell you tons of stories that were told by soldiers that I know about them seeing their friends get their butts kicked by these little bitty dudes that didn't look like much. But to actually know someone who, during the war, the great, whatever you want to call it, like, it's an actual war trophy from a Gurkha soldier.
Yeah.
Like, all other things considered. Evidently, the fellow was still alive when he surrendered it.
Really? That's unusual. That's how
I agree. But I have no doubt. I have no reason to doubt his story whatsoever.
That's awesome that you're going to get it. I'm jealous, because I love the Gurkhas. That's so badass, man. And to me, they've invented a knife, and that's come through the centuries, that works. Obviously, you carry one. Yep. I'm carrying one. We're both infatuated by them because they're functional. You know, for us, for a guy like you, for a guy like me, I look at it for a lot of reasons, but when I look at a kukri, whether it's this one or the one we were talking about earlier that I've just drawn a total blank on, the Scourge or whatever, I see a ton of functionality in it for the woods.
And there is.
It's practical. It's so practical. And that's one thing that I try to hammer into this channel, is more practicality than anything.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That's big with me.
I do. Because would you like to know what I base all of my mid-sized choppers on?
Yes.
What I judge them by? The Fisker's hatchet. It's cheap like borscht. Right. It's cheap like borscht. But this, anybody that's starting out in the woods, get yourself a bloody Fisker's hatchet. They're cheap like borscht. There's a lifetime warranty. They're made in Finland. I mean, they're ugly as sin.
Right.
They're not bushcraft cool. I've got bushcraft cool tools, and one day maybe I'll actually take you on a virtual tour of that, because I have bushcraft cool. But practically speaking, for a chopper, the Nopelope doesn't do anything that the Fiskars doesn't do, except it's easier to carry on your belt.
Right.
I'm a hardcore axe guy. I really am. I'm not really into big knives. I don't even own a single Bowie. I admire them. Mm. They work, and I'm not ever going to tell anybody that they don't work. They work amazingly well. As long as it's got good steel, good heat treat, the handle fits you, and you know your blade. Take a big stick, turn it into a little stick. That's how you get to know your blade. It's that simple. It's what you see Scab doing in every single video. He's taking big sticks, turning them into little sticks, and he's cutting stuff. Creates muscle memory. That's what it does.
Yep. That's what we try to do. That's the thing. You gotta use your stuff, man. And I'm blessed because of having guys like JR that send stuff, practical stuff. And my point too is this: I try to take, because I mentioned this last week, and we'll wrap this up soon, but I mentioned it. We live in a world where people look at it and want to see the tactical side, the self-defense, and I'm like, let's look at practicality. Let's use it for that. I love, like I have K-bars. Love them. Love the historical thing behind. And but if I can't use a knife, I don't carry it. If it's not practical, I don't carry
Yeah.
it. And Isaac the Noob had one of the best quotes I think I've ever heard in the knife world. And it was this: if you love a knife enough, you'll make it practical.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that. I believe that 1000%. Let's do
Mm-hmm.
this. Let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about when you're not at work, when you're camping. Tell us some of the cold. Do you like the cold weather camp?
I don't care if it's cold or it's warm. I'm gone. I'm out in the woods.
I got you. So that's kind of your thing.
Oh yeah. it's where the land where I grew up had 2 beaver dams, had both species of wild blueberry that we have here in Alberta, 3 different species of wild currant, wild Saskatoons, hazelnuts, you name it. I grew up in a bush.
Gotcha.
That's who I am. That's what I am. Don't put me in a city. You want to see somebody sketch out, don't put me in a city. Don't put me near too many people.
Right.
I'm not interested. Put me out in a bush.
Beautiful way to be, man.
A lot of people have tried to, when they learn a little bit about my history, they've tried to define it. I'm not a survivalist. I'm not a bushcrafter. I'm not any of those things. It's how I grew up. It's the time that I grew up. It's just what I did.
Yeah. And that's about you don't have to put a label on it. I absolutely, I love it. Well, brother, let's bring it to a close. Thank you. Let's see the Nopelope one more time. That thing's just dope, man. I love that thing.
I know.
Tremendous job, brother. Guys, listen. If you want to get a hold of Shaney, he is on Instagram, or you can go on Facebook to Shade. I believe it. Just type in Shade or ask me and I'll send you a link to it. Shaney is a guy, if you can, you want him to make something, because he's going to do 5160 insanely well. He's going to do micarta insanely well. It's going to be sharp. It's going to be heat treated. It's going to be the things you need. And listen, I'm not going to sit here. I've said this a million damn times. I'll say it. I'm not the damn QVC club or the channel that sells 99 knives for $3. That's not, I'm not going to steer you wrong. I had somebody trying to get on to me about links. Listen, my job on Choir Boys Cutlery Outdoors is to show you the knife. But I'll say this, and I'll say it 1,000 times. I will back Shaney and Shade Indonesia because they're quality. With that, we'll let that be the last word. Guys, thank y'all for coming in. We're rolling, Tom. We are rolling to 8,000. Thank y'all for supporting us. JC, stick around with me as I hang up, and then you and I'll say goodbye off the thing. Guys, thank y'all. Have a great night. Jay, thank you, brother. Thank you for being here. We gone, son.
My pleasure.
I don't know how long. Shit.